Oh, all right. Oh boy. All right. Looking at the doc here, looks like we had got some immediate follow up from our last podcast.
We do.
We do. For all of our 6 listeners, we made good on our field trip today to Roosters, which is a fun, casual joint.
That's true. Very fun.
Very fun, very casual. The goal here was to expose me to an actual corn dog.
Yes.
And we went to lunch. We went to Roosters, and on their menu, they have mini corn dogs.
With mustard.
So, with mustard, which I didn't have. But, Paul, maybe be better if you tell this story, and then I'll kind of pick up from there.
Well, we just decided that since Drew had never had a corn dog before, that we should fix that. So we met up today for lunch. Now, like most restaurants, they don't serve you a true corn dog, right? There is no stick to be seen. There is no full-sized hot dog. There are mini corn dogs, which are maybe 1 or 2 bites, but they are a good representation of the corn dog experience. So obviously, I enjoyed them. I found them to be delicious. They were crunchy, obviously very fried. A good corn to a dog ratio. I'm curious, Drew, what did you think?
Okay, so I think you did a pretty good summation there, right? And again, I have no frame of reference for what a corn dog is other than what Wikipedia and the internet tells me, right? And so here's my kind of initial thoughts. I will sum all of this up ahead of time and say that I don't feel that I had a quote-unquote canonical corn dog experience, only because, all right, so a couple things. I was led to believe that, we can say, a corn dog's not a corn dog if it doesn't have a stick, but I'm willing to look past that, right? That just gets in the way.
Right.
It's something I can chip a tooth on, right? The thing that I was unsure of was, what was the breading going to be? Now, to help illustrate this, and I think we may have gotten some pictures of me staring at the mini corn dogs.
We do.
All right. So the key word here is that the corn dogs served by Roosters are mini corn dogs.
Yes.
Okay. A full-size corn dog, if you Google the word corn dog, okay, you see pictures of what appear to be long cylindrical hot dogs with corn breading.
It is usually a full-size, a regular American standard hot dog.
Yep.
Dipped in corn batter. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So the thing to know here is that the menu item is mini corn dog. Now, there's a couple different ways you can arrive at a mini corn dog in your mind's eye. The first is, hey, what if you have or quarter or eighth or even 16th a regular hot dog, dip it in batter, and then fry it? I think that would still qualify technically as a corn dog. It would be a miniature corn dog.
I'd eat that.
So the first thing to note here is that what I bit into was not a hot dog, okay? This was, by my estimation, more akin to a quote-unquote Lil Smoky, because it did have a little bit of a smoke flavor to it. It was more sausage than hot dog.
It was a savory hot dog.
It was a savory hot dog. It was not a typical all beef or amalgamation beaks and I'm not going to curse. Not going to curse. It wasn't akin to a regular hot dog. Is that a fair statement?
I mean, a hot dog is a very wide category of things. I think you could have called that a hot dog, but it was not a traditional, what you would think of as a hot dog. It was a little bit more on the savory side. I do agree with that, yeah. Okay.
And then the other thing that struck me here was that I don't think it was fried in corn batter.
It tasted like a corn dog.
Disagree. I think that it was breaded and fried with the same thing that you would like if you go to another restaurant of your as one does, and order something like a jalapeno popper. I feel like it was fried in whatever that was, so it was like just regular dough batter, right? I didn't think that I didn't get any hint of corn in that batter.
So I have done a little bit more research, and I believe you can get what you would consider a traditional corn dog, the full corn dog experience at Dirty Frank's in Columbus.
All right. So let's say this, that yes, we made good on our promise. We went to Roosters. I waded into the waters of corn dog baptism. But I definitely came away wanting. I want to learn more. I'm tempted to go to a fairgrounds or someplace that is going to have
It is the summer. Yeah.
Or someplace I can get a canonical corn dog and then wash it down with a funnel cake.
Ooh.
So, yeah, funnel cake's pretty good.
Top notch.
Yeah, that's like top tier. That's like top tier fair food, right?
It's my favorite. Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty good. A lot of powdered sugar. But I think we should make it a point at some point to get on the Dirty Franks, because Dirty Franks is good even if you don't get a corn dog.
That's true.
For non-Columbus listeners, Dirty Franks is a local joint. I don't think it's a chain, right? I think it's just local to Columbus.
I don't think so. Yeah, I think it's just local.
Yeah, so it's a little hole-in-the-wall place to get hot dogs, and I guess they have brats and some other stuff too. But yeah, if you're 6 sheets to the wind in downtown Columbus, it is a place to go. So I think we could put a little bow in this by saying that I didn't hate it, but I don't think that I got the full corn dog experience. So to be continued. I think that we can put a pin in this for now, but I do think that we do need to go to Dirty Frank's and actually get a corn dog to fully cap this out.
We will make that happen.
We also got some dumpster chips that we referenced in this last podcast, without jalapenos because I'm not about that life. And they were fine.
They were fine.
Too many green onions. Too many green onions.
It was very green onion heavy. I will have to agree. Yeah. They went a little nuts.
Yeah, so I would say that if you are going to go to Roosters and you are going to get the dumpster chips, I would say tell them to at least go easy on the green onions and or the jalapenos. Otherwise, the bacon was interesting. It didn't look cooked.
Yeah, it tasted fine, but the appearance looked like it was just barely hit the minimum safe temperature. It was not crispy. It was very mushy and dry. Not dry, just ugh.
It was somewhere firmly between prosciutto and mealy.
Yes.
Like it was something. So long story. This is a long way of saying that we did go to lunch today, which was nice because it's always nice to see each other face to face. So we'll take another field trip, and we'll come back with more feedback on my journey into the corn dog realm. I'm not saying that our podcast is so popular that we need merch, Paul, but if I had ideas for T-shirts right now, we should do a hot dog family tree. And we should we should categorize scientific style the different hot dogs families, right? Kind of just build a tree, a tier or a tiering list or something of hot dogs. I think that'd make a pretty cool shirt.
that would yeah.
So that was the first one. The other one to bring back for follow-up is last podcast I mentioned that we found the Mario Battle Royale, and things have taken a turn, as they say.
They did.
Why don't you tell us what happened there, Paul?
So it looks like it got some attention, it got some press, and it drew the ire of Nintendo's lawyers. So they sent them a cease and desist order, which the developer thought he followed by changing it to DMCA Royale with different music, some different assets, but the same general gameplay, same idea. And Nintendo wanted nothing to do with that, sent them another cease and desist order, and it is now offline. I believe the developer has no intention of trying to fight it. He is just giving up, rolling over, and playing dead, which I would too if Nintendo sent me, big Nintendo with all their money and lawyers sent me a letter saying, "Hey, stop what you're doing," I'd be like, "Yes, sir. Sorry." And I'd shut it down. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's dead.
Yep.
If you got a chance to play it, I know that I think you and I both tweeted about it when it was out there. It had its moment in the sun, and it was a very cool thing. I will say that I'm sad to see it go.
Yeah.
There was an interesting article out on Kotaku about Nintendo's lawyers needing to chill. I guess if I had the IP that Nintendo did, I would want to protect it as well.
Yes.
But, I mean, really, Mario is, like, ubiquitous, right? Like, everybody knows what Mario is and who owns Mario, right?
They do.
If somebody wanted to make a game that was free, by the way, I don't think...
No, it was free. Yeah, no, not even an advertisement.
It was free, right? Now, of course, I don't have a multi-billion-dollar company / intellectual property to sit on and look down at Nintendo here, but if someone was going to make a fan-made love letter to a game or a family of games, like, would that be the worst thing in the world? I don't know.
Yeah, and I just kind of look at the emulation scene where people basically were playing ROMs on emulators, and Nintendo ignored that for a very long time. It's just relatively recently that they've been, sending takedown notices and fighting that. So they at least could have ignored it for a few months before they went after it. Let the hype die down. But nope, they were on top of it.
I think it was a really fun game while it lasted. I played a few rounds at night, and I think before and after we did the podcast, and I did terrible, but it was pretty fun. But I did see today that the next Battle Royale game that has come out is someone has revived Flappy Bird in the form of a Battle Royale. So we'll need to drop a link in the show notes for Flappy Bird Battle Royale.
I will have to play that.
Yeah, it's the same thing, right? It's up to 99 other people all playing Flappy Bird to see who can last the longest, just for bragging rights. But I think you can team up in that one as well, which is weird. And I don't know if there's a tax in it. I haven't really played it yet because Flappy Bird is one of those things that I said never again. It had its clutches in me in its day, and so I don't. I'm not really looking to get back into that ASAP. But we will have to drop a link in the show notes if people are looking for a browser-based game to play. That's pretty fun.
Indeed.
Yeah. Oh, boy.
I think that's all for follow-up, but
yeah,
I think everyone really wants to know the burning question. What's up with your two-phone lifestyle? Did you buy a new case? Is everything going okay?
I have, so still on the two-phone lifestyle. It's fine. I don't carry both phones everywhere. If I'm out and about during the day for lunch, like today, which you may or may not have gotten a picture of my two-phone life.
I did.
At lunch.
I did.
I do carry them with me just so I can stay on top of any type of Teams messages or email that I need to have. And the phone number associated with that line is my actual work number. So if I do have customers or coworkers or bosses that need to get a hold of me, that's the number they'll call. But everything I do is pretty much on Microsoft Teams, and it's integrated into the phone as well. Have not bought another case yet. You got to see the case that I used. I don't think you can really call it a case as such.
No, it's more than a skin, but not quite a case. It is very, very thin.
Yeah, there is no way that this thing would survive a fall.
But it does feel good in your hand. I will have to say that. It is very grippy. It's got a nice feel to it.
Yeah, so that's I think if I had to give it plus marks, and I think I put a link in last week's show notes to the one I bought, but the whole reason I wanted a case for this phone typically doesn't travel in my pocket like my daily driver phone does. With the exception of if I'm out and about during the day running an errand or grabbing lunch or something, I carry it with me. But if I'm going off site to visit a customer, or if I'm traveling somewhere, it lives in my computer bag. and it doesn't necessarily need a high degree of protection. But what it does need when I'm holding it is to make sure that I don't drop it. And I can't really tell you what this thing is made out of. The closest like material that I can compare it to is like egg roll. Like it's like, yeah. Well, it's but like if I take the case off the phone, it's just very thin and it feels flaky, and it feels like that if you were to take the case off and like twist it, like put it in your hands and twist one hand clockwise and the other hand counterclockwise and like twist the whole case, that it would like rip, because it's firm, but really thin, and it's light. It doesn't add any weight to the phone. It's almost like a screen protector for everything that isn't your screen, right? It's just very thin. It's semi-opaque, so like you can see the blue color of like the buttons and everything in the back of the phone. But it does make it easier to hold on to, because without a case, that phone is so freaking slippery in your hands because of the glass back. Like,
yep.
I dropped it on my carpet trying to hold it like against my ear, because you know how you do, right?
Yeah.
Like you're talking on the phone, you need your hand, you kind of like do the pinch between the shoulder and the ear.
Yeah, the shoulder pinch. Everyone's done the shoulder pinch.
Everybody's done the shoulder pinch, and that thing flew off my shoulder
like a bar of soap.
Yeah, just whoop right out and on my carpet. And had I been on any other surface, that phone would be broken. Like even on my hardwood or on my towel in my kitchen or something, that phone would be broke.
That would have been sad.
So I just think, that would have been really sad, because I haven't bought Apple Care yet. But yeah, it's just something, right? And I got to be honest, for as little as it was $20. Like, yeah, I don't know what it's made out of. Clearly, it doesn't weigh very much, so the cost to weight ratio is probably astronomical for whatever this thing is made out of. But it does a really, really good job. So I have not bought another case yet. But I officially have business cards again, and I don't have a business card holder. So I'm thinking, what if I got a case that I could also put business cards in?
Oh, no. I am... A lot of people have the combo wallet or being able to put like some credit cards in their case. I don't know. I'm just a purist. I think your phone should be your phone. Your case should be as thin as possible to offer you the amount of protection you want, but no thicker. It shouldn't, like, no pop sockets, no wallets, no place to put cards. Just no. You could buy yourself a very nice... You can even go to Etsy and probably get a handcrafted business card holder, very thin, and keep that in your pocket, and then be much more dignified than building it into your case.
All right. So side conversation real quick. So now granted, right now I'm spending a lot of time working at home, right? I do go on customer visits for my work. And funny enough, I not only have one work badge, I have two. So I have a badge that has my picture and says Andrew, whoever that is, and has the logo of the company that I work for on it. And that is the badge that gets displayed outwards at all times. I have provided to me a dual badge holder, right? And then the other slot in the badge holder is for my smart card, because we use smart cards for certain logins. It's fine. I got a one of those little stretchy lanyard things that you attach to your belt. But the problem is that the badge holder that I had is heavy, because it's a kind of thick plastic and two cards and a pretty heavy duty lanyard that actually doesn't have like the middle little like tension clip, right? You know what I mean?
Okay.
Like most of them do. This is more of like almost like a little mini carabiner that goes around your belt loop, and then the plastic case for the two cards kind of goes on there. So it hangs a little low, right? Because the holder isn't really on your belt loop; it's kind of below your belt loop. So it hangs a little low, more thigh than waist, and it was really moving around there. I didn't like it. So I spent time on Amazon the other day researching badge holders, looking for a better solution to the badge holder thing, because I know that certain people like wearing their badges around their neck. Certain people like wearing their badges on their hips, on their belts or whatnot. Some people don't like wearing their badge at all. I firmly believe that employee handbooks exist for a reason, and most employee handbooks say you must be wearing your identification at all times.
At all times.
At all times. So I spent some time researching badge holders, and I came away with one that I feel is supremely well crafted, I must say. I'll put a link in show notes. But it itself is aluminum, so it's got a little heft, but it can hold up to 4 cards.
Nice.
Now, granted, it's not double-sided. Like, I can't have a card facing out each direction. And what's interesting about this particular badge holder is that it has a tension-based clip, almost like you would find for like a cell phone clip. So instead of clipping my cell phone to my belt, I can clip my entire badge to my belt or my pocket, because it actually has a fair amount of grip in the little clip. And then it also has a loop for like lanyards, or if I want to like wear it around my neck or something. I will say the one thing that I'm not super pleased about it with is that the slot for like you know how the little lanyards have those little like rubber plastic loops that kind of clip, and that's what the badge hangs on.
I do.
It's not wide enough to support that. Yeah. Only just, right? It's just a little bit, and I could see that the sides were kind of pinched, and I looked at this and I thought, about a week of wearing this, and it's gonna just cut that, and my badge is gonna fall off of there. So I ditched that, and I put a lanyard on it just to see what it was like wearing it on the neck. It's a little heavy for the neck. I wouldn't want to wear it all day. But I'm gonna try the pocket clip lifestyle and kind of see where that takes me. So I'm looking for a good badge holder, and this first attempt isn't bad. I like the way it looks. I like the way it feels. It's got a really nice like front panel. You get your full effect badge face on there, and it's got a little thing kind of like some smart wallets where it's got a little clip you pull down, and then it like shoots the cards out the top. Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, I had one before the one I have now, which I'll talk about here in a little bit. I was constantly breaking them, so I went to Amazon and I found one that basically had the word super heavy duty right in the name. And it's made out of plastic, but it's very sturdily built. It held 3 badges. I only have one, but it would shoot them out. But then some very nice gentleman that I know 3D printed me a badge holder, and I've been using that ever since.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'm still using it, Drew. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah, I too went through a phase at the last company that I worked for with Paul, where I also needed a badge holder, because the badge holder that I used for like my first 4.5 to 5 years at my previous company was one that I took from my previous job, and it was a clear plastic thing that you put your badge in. The problem is that over the years, a amount of grime and gunk kind of worked its way in there, and there really is no way to get that crap out of there.
Yeah.
It's like combination human filth and dust and syrup, I'm sure. Like, who knows, right? Like, there's something in there. I couldn't get it out. It smelled in that thing. Like, if I ever held up my badge holder in my nose and smelled it, just smelled bad. And then shortly around that time, I got a 3D printer. There are many, many different badge holders that you can 3D print. They're nothing fancy, right? They're just basically little slots that hold 1 or 2 cards, and then there's a loop for something to hold it. And I printed a few of those. I gave out a few of them at work. I think I gave one to you, one to Nick, one to Gene, and a few other people that I like. I thought about doing this for this too, but my 3D printer is a little under the weather right now, so I gotta just take that thing apart and clean it. And I don't have that kind of time right now. But I will get it working, and I'm sure that once I get tired of how heavy this thing is, I'll probably 3D print one or spend another $12 or $13 or whatever on Amazon.
Yep.
Yeah. So I will put a link in show notes to the one that I have. But yeah. So that was my other big purchase this week. I bought a couple books on Amazon as well that I want to read. I feel like I spend too much on Amazon. I really do.
You and me both, buddy. I finally gave in and got that Amazon Prime Visa rewards card thing. So now,
really?
Yeah, and it's really sad how much rewards I've already racked up just in a few months. It's sad. It's Amazon is that great. You have an idea, you're like, I wonder if they sell this. Then you find it, then you order it, and then a couple days later you have it. Like there's no friction. There's no, well, next time at the store I'll take a look. It's like, no.
Have you done the Amazon locker thing yet?
I have not.
All right.
Only because I don't live anywhere near one.
I don't either.
Yeah.
So you talk about privilege, right? So like I get, I'm an Amazon Prime member, and if I place an order on Amazon for some goofy trinket, right? At the longest I usually wait for something to show up at my house is 2 days.
Yep.
Most things now, because we have a distribution center here in Columbus, arrive the next day.
Yes.
And they arrive via Amazon courier most of the time. Very, very infrequently now do they arrive via UPS. Thanks to my Ring doorbell, I see the nice people come and drop things off at my porch. We can talk about that business model and the dehumanizing aspect of it, and I think that we could talk about that later. But they ship things so fast now, right? And unless I'm ordering something extremely specialized that has to come from some third-party seller somewhere, things get to my house within 2 days. But I am such an impulsive son of a bee. I sometimes, when I'm placing an order, will do the same day pickup and drag my ass all the way down to campus because
wow.
Here in Columbus, there are basically 2 locations near me that I can have things dropped off at an Amazon locker. The first is Whole Foods in Upper Arlington, which, for those of you not familiar with Columbus topology, that's probably from where I live about a 20-minute drive with traffic.
Right.
It's not far. And there's a couple different ways I can get there depending on the time of the day. But the problem is that place a lot of times can't get the same day pickup for whatever reason.
Okay.
But here's the kicker. The main Amazon locker that can get the same day delivery is on campus at OSU, which is literally right down the street from the Whole Foods on Lane Avenue. Like, it's probably 2 miles, if that. So I have done that where, like, I want something when I want it, and I'll place it. And typically the way it works is if I place an order at, 10 o'clock in the morning because I'm feeling kind of spendy, they will say, hey, that'll get to the Amazon locker by 9 o'clock. You get an update when the thing is there, and whenever you roll up and park illegally in the UDF parking lot, you walk down a couple doors to the Amazon locker. You pull up your email that says your stuff's here, and then it takes you to the Amazon app. It says, hang on a second, and you get a little spinny disc while the human robots behind the wall of lockers find the thing that you ordered, shove it in a locker, hit a button somewhere, I think, that basically sends a message, a push notification to your phone that then says, hey, scan this barcode, and then it pops open a locker, and you take your stuff, and then you close the locker and you leave.
That is really neat. I've never done that before.
Yeah, I've done it just because I can't wait the extra 4 hours that it'll show up the next morning, right?
Right.
That's my sickness. Like I have done that more than I want to tell you. And sometimes because I'm such a guilt-strict person, right? Parking is problematic down there because I don't know how much time you've spent on campus, but it's right at the corner of Lane and I think it's High.
Okay.
And like there's not a lot of places to park there. Like I said, there's this UDF parking lot. And like the parking lot is right at the sight line from the counter, and if they're not busy, they watch you park. So like I'll get out of my car, and if someone's looking at me as I'm parking, I'll walk in there, buy a $2 Red Bull, walk out, and then go over to the Amazon locker and get my stuff. Just because like
you're shamed into using their parking lot and making a purchase.
Yeah, exactly. Otherwise, you have to like park on the street, and you have to like, not that you have to walk far. It's a lot of inconvenience just for the simple fact that I'm so impulsive. I'm a broken human. I just really am.
Yeah, I think Amazon is rolling out 1-day shipping as standard in most places if they can. So soon it'll be 1 day free shipping.
Yeah, so I placed an order yesterday for this badge holder. In addition to a book on SQL Server on Linux, the book took 2 days. Like, it's getting here tomorrow. I could have done the Amazon locker thing, but, you know, honest to goodness, like, I will pick up that book and read it on the weekends anyway, so I'm not super worried. But yeah, that most things I have ordered in recent memory have arrived the next day. I think it is largely a factor of time, depending on what time of day you place the order. But I usually feel pretty spendy early in the morning, so I'll usually, like, you know, around 10 o'clock or so when I hit a little bit of a lull and I'm brewing some coffee, I'm like, what can I spend money on today? And then I just, I can, hey, Drew, you could use a new badge holder. And, you know, that's how that conversation goes.
Yep.
And then before you know it, I'm knee-deep in links to badge holders.
Yep. And then Amazon's going to think that you're obviously a badge holder collector and begin showing you ads for badge holders forever.
Oh, you wanna talk breaking the algorithm? I searched for foot massager one time. I'm not gonna say how I got there, but I wound up on personal massagers instead of foot massagers. Yeah. And I got some real my Amazon suggestions got real weird real quick. So just beware, right? Because if you're on a shared computer that maybe your spouse or friends use to also look at things on Amazon, you're going to have some splaining to do.
Yeah, my wife and I share an Amazon account, and so now my homepage is a collection of badge holders, because I was looking at the old one I had, books and purses, some bracelets. Yeah, it gets me.
All right, so here we go. My Amazon suggestions right now is I have a whole slew of head razors. I've got a bunch of NAS hard drives, some DACs, and insect repellent, which I don't know how I got there.
Very on brand.
Yeah. Kindles. There's a couple Kindles on here because I'm still trying to decide if I want a Kindle or not.
And there's a new Kindle coming out, the all-new Kindle Oasis.
Okay, tell me more.
So I have the previous version of the Kindle Oasis because I felt it was what I wanted.
Okay, well, let's go. Slow down. So Kindle Oasis, right?
Yes.
So I'm assuming that there are different tiers of Kindles, right?
Oh,
and Oasis sits somewhere on the tier.
It is the top of the line Kindle. It is the best one they sell. And the reason I wanted it is I wanted a good quality backlight, and I wanted physical page turning buttons. That's very important to me. I want to just be as lazy as possible when I'm reading. Just rest my thumb on that button and push down. It's got a great screen for reading. I love it. I read on it almost every night. But now they have a new version coming out July 24th, and it has an adjustable warm light to shift screen shade from white to amber. That's the new feature.
All right. So I've never owned a Kindle. I own several Kindle books, and like a dope, apparently, I have always read my Kindle books on my iPad.
Ooh. Which is fine. I also enjoy, like, if I'm sitting somewhere unexpectedly and I'm like, I'm kind of bored, I will pull up the Kindle app on my phone or my iPad and read as well. But when I'm a read before bed kind of guy, and I like not having to stare at a bright screen to read. But I like not having physical books. I like the thinness and the ease of e-readers. Yeah, so I have the...
Okay. So you mentioned that the new killer feature, right, is that it shifts the background from white to amber.
Yes.
When you say amber, is it more sepia tone or is it
yes.
true amber?
It looks kind of sepia. Yeah.
All right, because that is what I always switch the Kindle app to be. For some reason, staring at that white just gives me a headache. But yeah, I'm still heavily considering getting a Kindle. So there's the Oasis, and I was led to believe that the Paperwhite was the top of the line.
I think the Paperwhite is actually one step down. Yes. So if you're thinking about pricing, right? So they have the plain Jane generic Kindle, which is all it has a front light, which is different than the back light. It actually shines the light. It's kind of like around the ring, and it shines onto it, and it's $90. They have the Kindle Paperwhite, which I think is all touchscreen, no physical buttons, and it is I messed up. $130. It is now waterproof. Let me see if that thing does it have, no, it has no physical buttons, so you have to tap the touchscreen to do it, to change pages. The Kindle Oasis is $250. So it is
right.
it is the luxury brand of the Kindle.
So stop right there. So $250. If you had asked me point blank, gun to my head, what a Kindle costs, I would have nowhere said that. I would have said $150 tops. I guess why? What makes this $250?
I think the build quality is a little nicer, and it's the physical buttons. It's got a little bit of a larger screen, I believe. Yes, it does have a bit of a larger screen, but it's all about those physical buttons. So you have hardware buttons you can do for page forward and page back, and that was the feature I really wanted. I mean, I know touchscreens are fine. It's where the world is going. But for me, having to like move my thumb and touch the book, where the book is, to turn the pages it's too much. I know it's like half an inch, but
okay.
Now when I bought it, the Paperwhite was not waterproof. It is waterproof now. So it is probably a more difficult choice to pick the Oasis now, but it is what I have.
Okay, all right. So more questions here. Mm-hmm. I have more questions.
Okay,
I'm on the Amazon Oasis page right now. All new Kindle Oasis. Yes. I like the champagne.
Yeah.
Okay, so we need to take a step back for a second. The 8 gigabyte.
Mm-hmm.
With special offers, which we'll get to in a minute, is $250. There is an 8 gig version and a 32 gig version.
Yes.
Which, if you include the special offers, is a $30 price jump. That is 4 times the storage for $30. So my question to you is, how many books conceivably can I store with 8 gigs?
Oh, a lot. I don't think I bought the 32, but now I'm going to go look. Hold on, we'll find out.
Because the 32 gig without the special offers is $300 for an e-reader. I was operating under the assumption that e-readers, don't at me, were the poor man's iPads.
Yes.
I get it. They fill a particular niche, right? But $300 just seems a little outrageous to me.
Yeah, so they have the previous generation, which is the one I have. I bought the 8 gigabyte for, now they have it on sale for $220. That's without special offers. With special offers, it's a little bit more, because I also bought it without the special offers because I don't like seeing the ads when I go to pick up.
Yeah,
I know.
No.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm with you, and I think that's a little scummy.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you continue to scroll down the page, this is what I was looking for. I'm glad they have this. Kudos to Amazon. They have the kind of the chart of what you get for the different price points. So
yes.
It looks like the quote unquote all new Kindle, which is the low end, right? That's $90. I'm assuming that's with offers.
Yes.
It's pretty highly rated. 6-inch glare-free, 4 gigs of storage, 167 points per inch of resolution, 4 front LEDs, and it's got Bluetooth, so I can't take it for jury duty.
Yeah.
And then they have the Paperwhite, which is the one that I was previously looking at, right? So you're looking at from $129. And again, they have the 8 or 32 gig versions. Is the storage upgradable yourself? Like, can I throw a memory card in there?
No, it is not.
Damn
But
it.
I have dozens of books on there, and I don't think I'm even close to using the 8 gigs. And I can't read books that fast, so...
All right, so you're looking at a resolution of 300 points per inch and 5 front LEDs. Now, are the LEDs behind the screen or in front of the screen?
I think on the regular Kindle, they're in front of the screen, but the Paperwhite is backlit.
With 5 LEDs?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Now, compare that to the Kindle Oasis, which is a full inch bigger, right? Also 300 points per inch in terms of resolution, but has 25 LEDs, so it's probably way more backlit.
Yes.
Okay. The Paperwhite and the Oasis also have cellular connectivity, which I would never ever use.
No, I did. Yeah.
And it looks like the Paperwhite. I'm sorry. It looks like the Oasis kind of has like a little hump on the back for what I assume is ergonomics.
It is for ergonomics. Though I honestly did find it a little bit of a hypocrite moment for myself. I did find the Oasis a little heavy to hold when I'm lying down and I'm kind of holding my arm up. So I did get a pop socket and put it on the back of there to kind of just bridge between my two fingers, and it's much better. I know.
Little TC tugger for your e-reader.
Exactly. But it is ergonomic, and it also adds a battery as well. So the battery lasts a comically long amount of time.
All right.
Yep. Honestly, if I was going to recommend my first Kindle, I would say the Paperwhite. If you don't mind the lack of physical buttons, I think it's going to be great. But if you want the deluxe, all-in experience, I love my Oasis. It is great. I use it every day.
I'm gonna have to get eyes on that next time we're together. Bring it. I want to see it.
Oh, and it's an aluminum body rather than plastic. That's another thing too.
Yeah, that's the. I do like me some aluminum.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking at the Paperwhite store page now, and 8 gigs without the special offers is $149. If you go up to the 32, you're at $179.
Mm-hmm.
Man, and then of course I want to look at a case. Amazon, you know me too well.
Yeah, I don't have a case on mine, but I could see the. Especially if you're going to throw it in a bag or take it places, I could see I can see why you would run a case. Yeah.
The screen isn't glass, right? It's just plastic.
It is just plastic, and it's mostly they're designed so you can read it like outside. So like if you're on the beach or something, like not that I'm on the beach ever, but it has the same kind of finish as an actual book, so you can read it in direct sunlight.
So they have the leather covers, which are another $40. Where's the cloth one?
They're not going to sell a cloth cover for the Oasis. Come on.
No. Listen, Oasis, too much for my blood.
Got it.
Leather cover, water-safe fabric. Okay, so they've got yellow, and they have charcoal. The blue, I gotta be honest, the blue fabric looks pretty cool.
I'm looking at it now. Yeah, it looks very nice.
It looks fine. It's a little cover. It reminds me a lot of the iPad cover I had for a while before I got frustrated with that. And it's waterproof?
Yes.
Interesting.
You could read it in the bathtub.
All right, that's going on the wish list. That's going on the wish list. I want to get an e-reader. The time has come, you know.
Yeah, I really enjoy it. It's not as bright on the eyes. It's kind of like a signal to my brain that like, hey, it's time to kind of wind down and, begin sleepy time. And I'll read my trashy science fiction or fantasy novels. And on my Kindle. I love it.
Yeah, I got to get one. I've spent a little too much recently, but it's on my list. I really, really want to get one. I really, really want to get one. Oh, Amazon, you're ruining my life.
Yeah, but they're so damn convenient.
Yeah. You want to talk about Raspberry Pi 4s?
Yeah, I do. So when I saw this announcement, I immediately thought of you because of you being having a hobby of being a maker. So let me explain a little bit what the Raspberry Pi is, and then you can kind of tell the listeners what the update to the 4 is and your thoughts on it. So there is a how do I kind of explain this? Small little all-in-one computers. Now they're not full. There's no case. They're usually kind of low-powered and inexpensive, and the Raspberry Pi is kind of the canonical example of these. They are inexpensive. They're like $35 to start out with. They have relatively lower powered processors, low amount of RAM, but they are fully functional, truly capable computers. And while you can use them just as a computer, they really shine when you use them as part of a project. So a lot of people use them as kind of small, like emulation, game machines that they can hook up to their television. I know a lot of people who use them to as part of like home automation. So they use them as kind of bridges to Apple's HomeKit and lots of other things. So it's just really small. They're bigger than somewhere in between the size of like a deck of cards and a smartphone, kind of that size. Recently, the fine folks at Raspberry Pi announced the latest edition, the Raspberry Pi 4, and it looks like it made some significant improvements. So why don't you tell us a little bit about the new Raspberry Pi 4, Drew?
Yeah, so I first of all, I agree with everything you just said, up until the point where you said that they're not necessarily for full-blown computers. I think that was probably true until the release of Raspberry Pi 4. So just to give a little more flavor on the history, the Raspberry Pi brand, if you will, is an open hardware spec. So the Raspberry Pi Foundation kind of cobbles together the spec and the schematics, and then companies can produce the Raspberry Pis. So if you go to a store like Micro Center and you say, I'm looking for a Raspberry Pi, you're going to get a shelf full of very different yet very similar options of the same exact board with the same exact components, just manufactured by different companies. But they all function the same, right? When you buy them, you are literally just buying the hardware. When you open the box, there is a system on a chip with USB ports and a network port and some GPIO pins, which we'll talk about a little bit later, and some input-output pins and a place to plug it in. That's it. It comes with no case. It comes with no power supply. It comes with no storage. You have to bring some more things to the table to get this to be a fully functional thing.
Right. Keyboard, SD card, display.
Yep. And there's like, I don't know, 9 or 10 different models of Raspberry Pis. There was the Raspberry Pi A, which was the first one. And then we're on the Raspberry Pi Model 4, Raspberry Pi 4 right now, which just came out. And everywhere in between, there were a bunch of Raspberry Pi 3 models. There was the Raspberry Pi 2, and then there was the 3. Then there was the 3 Model A, and then there was the 3 Model B. There's Raspberry Pi Zeros, 0Ws, 0WH.
Oh, right, the smaller ones, yes.
Yep. They all kind of fit a few little particular niches, depending on what your project is. And price points range from anywhere from $5 all the way up to $55. And the price difference usually comes down to two things: the amount of memory and the scale of the processor, and the footprint of the actual device and connectivity. So for a brand new Raspberry Pi 4 base model, you're in for $35. The previous generation Raspberry Pi 3 Model B Plus, which was the highest of the high end before the Raspberry Pi 4, also $35, which comparatively on paper has very, very similar specs to the new Raspberry Pi 4. The intriguing ones on there are the Raspberry Pi Zeros. The Zeros are very, very thin. They are roughly half the size of a Raspberry Pi, but they do not have the USB 2 and USB 3 ports on them. and they also don't have RJ45 networking. So you literally just get a little wireless-only device. But it all comes down to what you want to do with the project. So you were correct in saying that, look, these are great little project boards. You can do certain things with them, but they're not necessarily full computer replacements. With the launch of the Raspberry Pi 4, that equation changes a little bit because
Interesting.
The Raspberry Pi Foundation basically released 3 different specs of the Raspberry Pi 4. The base Raspberry Pi 4 occupies a very similar spec sheet and identical price point of the Raspberry Pi 3 Model B+. And what that has, what you get for your $35 is you get a ARM-based processor, which we'll talk about a little bit here in a minute, that is a 64-bit, in air quotes, ARM processor, even though it doesn't really support 64-bit instruction. And the Raspberry Pi Model B Plus ran at 1.4 gigahertz. The Raspberry Pi 4 runs a full 100 megahertz faster at 1.5 gigahertz. The Raspberry Pi Model 3 B Plus had 1 gig of RAM. The Raspberry Pi 4 you can get in configurations of 1, 2, or 4 gigabytes of RAM. So, and to support that higher memory space, the 1 gigabyte model starts at $35, $45 for the 2 gig, $55 for the 4 gig. That is a standard MSRP. It doesn't matter which manufacturer you buy your Raspberry Pi from, you were probably going to pay that price. A lot of shops, because a lot of times when you go in to buy a Raspberry Pi, you're not just buying one, you're probably buying 3 or 4. A lot of places will discount them slightly until you start buying them in bulk, and then they start ramping the price up.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So like Micro Center, for instance, you can walk in there and you can buy a Raspberry Pi Zero for $5 if you're only buying one. If you buy 2, the price goes up to $15 each. If you buy 3 or more, it goes up to $25 each.
Wow.
Because they don't keep a lot of them in stock, so they make up a little bit in margin when you're buying more than one.
Okay.
Yeah. So the Raspberry Pi 4, right? So the interesting thing about the Raspberry Pi 4 is that with the higher memory capacity, I would say that you could pretty comfortably run a workable Linux, aka Chromebook-like environment for less than $100. Okay? Because remember that you're going to buy the 4 gigabyte version of this Raspberry Pi 4 for $55. You still need to bring a case, probably, right? And it doesn't need to be anything fancy. Power supply, which these new ones, all the previous Raspberry Pi models could be powered over micro USB. This is now USB-C. So you need a USB-C compliant power supply or an adapter. Dongle life for your Raspberry Pi.
Everyone ends up in Dongle Town.
Everybody comes to Dongle Town. I made that joke at Micro Center. Didn't go over very well. I made it in the Apple section, and I got a really dirty look. So you need to bring a power supply. You need to bring a case. You also need to bring a micro SD card because the Raspberry Pi has no onboard storage. So you have to have something to run your OS off of. So if you're in a place like Micro Center, the first place you're going to go is over to the Raspberry Pi section. You're going to get your Raspberry Pi. You're probably going to get a case. You're probably going to get a power supply, unless you have like a phone charger or something that already has a USB-C adapter on it. And then you're going to walk over to the digital photography side of the store, and you're going to buy a micro USB card or a micro SD card. And again, depending on the speed and capacity that you buy that at, you're probably going to be in for anywhere from $5 to $30, depending on capacity. So you can't just look at it as a $55 price point because you have to buy this other stuff, right? The other thing is that if you plan on hooking this up to a monitor, they have changed the output. It used to be straight HDMI. In order to cram some more ports on this thing, they've moved to a micro HDMI adapter.
Ooh, that kind of stinks.
So you need,
but
again...
now they have 2 of them, right?
Now they have 2 of them.
There it is.
Yep. So you could do dual monitors on this thing now. It's a question of should you, depending on the resolution you're going to run at, because we'll get to one of the things that I'm most excited about here in a minute. But it also has micro HDMI now. So you're probably going to. I don't have a micro HDMI cable laying around. So
I don't either.
Yep. And guess what? If I'm hooking this up to a TV, I don't want a 3-foot one. I probably want a 2-meter or something a little bit longer so I can tuck this thing somewhere, right? So just, you're in for about $100 reasonably if you want to build a computer. But the cool thing here is that this is now at a point where if I had a relative or a friend that said to me, Drew, I need a computer to do email and my Facebook and my other stuff, I would have absolutely no problem throwing a Linux distribution on this with a desktop experience and saying, go to town.
Yeah, like you said, it's very much like a Chromebook in that case.
It is. It is 100% almost a Chromebook at that point. I mean, it's pretty ultra portable. I mean, the fact that it has an HDMI connection, you can hook it up to your TV, you can hook it up to a monitor, you can hook it up to whatever you want. One of the big changes, I think the thing that really made me the most excited here is that this particular Raspberry Pi 4 now has the capability to drive true 4K resolutions at 60 hertz. The previous generations of Raspberry Pis could do it, but you had to mess with it a little bit. You had to kind of overclock the graphics and change the display methods so you didn't get flickering or freezing or stuff like that. So this new version, it looks like it supports 4K.
Yep.
I don't think it has the horsepower to drive 2 4K displays, but it definitely has enough to drive 1.
Yeah, I think I read that it does 2 4K displays at 30.
Yeah, but nobody wants that.
Well, I mean, it's fine. It's fine. But yeah, it's not ideal.
Yeah. Yeah. So, as somebody who recently purchased a 4K display for his living room, and had some trouble running some of his Raspberry Pis on that display, I'm pretty juiced about that. I did go to Micro Center today. I was really hoping to snag one of the 2 or 4 gig models, but those have been sold out faster than they can put them on the shelves, literally. But I did pick up one of the 1 gig versions just because it's close in spec to what I already have, and what I have is fine.
Right.
Like the 2 and the 4 gigs are nice to have. So I gnashed my teeth a little bit with them this morning, but I'm over it. I got the 1 gig version, and I put it in the case and formatted the memory card and everything. I haven't really messed with it too much yet. But I'm anxious to hook it up to the TV and see what happens, and use it that way. So the other kind of interesting change is they changed the GPIO pinout just a little bit, and I don't have the page up right this second. But what they did is they added it looks like they added a couple 5.5 volt ins and outs to power this thing. It looks like they added a few UART ports, which if you're working with GPIO, I don't know why you would use UART, but...
now, Drew, what would you use a GPIO port for?
So I'm glad you asked. So I have messed a lot. I have done some interesting stuff with Raspberry Pis in the house. I've got a ton of Arduino boards laying around. I've got a ton of Raspberry Pi boards laying around. I have done some little IoT side projects using my Raspberry Pis. I have a couple Pi Zeros that I have wired up. Basically, with the GPIOs, you can buy sensors, you can buy motors, you can buy displays, you can buy all sorts of things if you're a budding electrician, and you can prototype pretty quickly with them. You just have to basically... listen, there's a ton of tutorials online. You don't have to be an electrical engineer to figure this stuff out. You connected a few things to these GPIO ports using some demos you find online. You typically have to hack together some little Python code or C++ code or Java if you're that kind of person, to basically drive these things. So one project I did with the Raspberry Pi Zero at my house is I hooked up a little S2C display with a humidity and temperature sensor and was just basically using that sensor to record humidity readings in my basement. And then because it's an internet connected device and it can run ARM based software, I wrote some Python code that was native to ARM and was able to stream stuff to Azure. So like you can do little prototyping projects like that, or you can do, like you said, stuff around the house, right? You can do home automation stuff. You can do lighting. You can do all sorts of things. There's a bunch of different projects out there at varying levels of complexity. If you want to do crazy complex stuff like a robotics project, like, yeah, it can totally do that. Or if you just want to do something simple, there's lots of little great projects that can get you off the ground pretty easily. I'm surprised that you haven't, really jumped into this more yet.
Outside of building a machine to do old console emulation, I really haven't gotten into it much. I'm always I have a Raspberry Pi shaped hole in my heart. I wish I could figure out the right project to do that I would I don't want to do something that I would just oh, look, neat, I made a light go on when I push a button. I want something that I would be able to use every day. So I'm actually on the lookout for a good project to start with.
Yeah. So I would say that if you were going to go pick up a Raspberry Pi and you were really hurting for projects to do, there's basically 3 projects going from not so easy to going from super bone easy to a little bit harder,
okay.
Right? So the one that I absolutely will advocate for over and over is Raspberry Pis are great for running a piece of software known as Pi-hole. And I think I've talked to you about Pi-hole before, right?
You have.
Okay, so for people who haven't listened to this, to me rant or talk about this, I'm not a person who runs an ad blocker in any browsers, right? I don't roll that way. But what Pi-hole is Pi-hole is a piece of software that basically acts as a local DNS server for your house. So right now, if you're sitting at home listening to this podcast on your home Wi-Fi network, you have a bunch of network settings probably controlled by your internet service provider that handles DNS traffic requests out to the world, right? And a lot of times, your ISP maintains a DNS server, and they can do varying degrees of scummy stuff with injecting ads or injecting messages into your web browser,
trackers,
right?
Things like that. Yeah,
right. What most people do at home is, if they have the ability and the wherewithal to log into whatever their router is, they can manually control their DNS settings. And at a very minimum, I always tell people to point one, at Google and one at OpenDNS, right? It's just so, you just have kind of a quote unquote third party other than your ISP controlling your DNS queries, right?
Right.
But even that's not great, because at the end of the day, all that's doing is name resolution to get you from point A to point B on the internet. And with things like online ads, a lot of times when you go to a website that is using trackers or using third-party stuff to do not nice things to you, you don't have a lot of control over that happening. As you're loading a page that probably has some JavaScript that is loading some kind of tracking image or something that's keeping track of you out there in the browser without you really having any control over it. And that's the kind of the space that ad blockers occupy, right? Is when the page tries to load that thing, your ad blocker running on your computer says, not today, Satan, and basically shuts that down, right?
Right.
But what Pi-hole does is Pi-hole takes that burden off of your computer and puts it at the network level, because it's great to have an ad blocker running on your local computer, but what about like your phones or your iPads or other devices in your house that make DNS requests? Pi-hole basically acts as a DNS server for your house. So the way it works is you install the Pi-hole software on a Raspberry Pi, right? You go, there's 2 ways to do it. You can download an image of Pi-hole and format the memory card that you're going to shove into your Raspberry Pi already, or you can have a base image Raspberry Pi and install the software through a typical Linux package manager. Once you do, the idea is you connect this Raspberry Pi to your network. I recommend connecting it directly via RJ45. You're welcome to do Wi-Fi, whatever works for you. What you do then is you go and you log into your router, and you point your router's DNS to be whatever the IP is of your Raspberry Pi that's running Pi-hole. what'll happen is every time there's a DNS request, it goes to the Pi-hole. And the Pi-hole has basically a blacklist of, if there's ever a DNS request to these domains, don't serve it.
Okay.
So if there's a known malicious or scummy website that does tracking or ad serving or whatever, it's cut off at the network level. Your browser never sees it because the Pi-hole will basically deny the lookup. Now, this works 99% of the time.
Okay.
The problem you run into, and I will fully admit it has only happened to me twice, is occasionally when web developers leverage libraries that then depend on other libraries that live on these scummy domains, websites can break. And I have had this happen on the United Healthcare website, and I've had it happen on the HP website. Now, once you install Pi-hole, you get a really cool web interface where you can go and you can see what's been blocked and what's been let through and how many domain requests you get, which, interestingly enough, if you have smart home devices, you'd be shocked at how many DNS requests they make. But having this dashboard, you also get that intelligence to see what's happening.
Okay.
But basically, everything routes through that. And it works for your phones, too. So, like, if you're out on websites, you don't get pop-ups anymore. You don't get ads. You don't get any of that stuff because it's all being swallowed up by the Pi-hole living on your network. So, like, in my house, I've got a Raspberry Pi Model 3 that sits right next to my cable modem and my router. The interesting thing about the Raspberry Pis is they can be powered over USB, right? Like, the Model 3s were powered over micro USB. So all I did is I had a USB to micro USB. Most modern routers have a USB port for things like printer sharing or USB hard drive sharing. You just plug that bad boy into your router. So as long as your router's on, your Raspberry Pi's on.
That's genius.
You plug an you plug an RJ45 into it, and you have a home DNS server. You can also use Pi-hole to be your DHCP server, which is also pretty cool because then you get like name resolution within your network a little easier, not having to rely on your router for that. And listen, the Raspberry Pi Model 3, let alone the Model 4, is more than capable of doing this, right? It's just a little dumb. It's a little dumb terminal. You log into the web interface. You check from time to time to see what's going on. Yeah, and it's really kind of fascinating every once in a while to go in there and take a look at what's requesting what. Like I've got several smart home devices that phone home way too much, in my opinion. But I get it. And it's just interesting to see all that. And that, to me, is probably the first place I would start. And the reason for that is that it is gonna make you SSH into your Raspberry Pi.
Love it.
Right?
Love it. Yep.
So, like, you get it up and running, you have it plugged into your network, so you have to first figure out what IP it's got, if it can't resolve the name, right? So you have to figure out what IP it's on, you have to SSH into it with the default credentials. It's going to, obviously it's not going to make you, but you should change the default credentials because it's the same for everybody on the base image. You're going to use a Linux package manager to download and install it. Right? So if you're not familiar doing that, that's a fun thing to learn. I think it's a crucial skill, especially if you work in IT, to know how to use a Linux package manager. You're going to teach yourself a little bit of networking in the process because once you get it up and running and you have to configure your DNS, like it's a fun, probably 2-hour little project to get working correctly. And it's perfect, right? Like it just runs. And of course, just like everything else, it's now a computer on your network that you're going to want to make sure you keep updated. So like, every month or so, if you go on to the web-based interface, you will see a little thing in the bottom footer of the page. It's like, hey, there's a new version available. And when you get that, you also get the latest block lists and you get the latest security fixes for the Raspberry Pi software. So yeah, that to me is, if you're looking for something to do on a rainy Saturday or Sunday, Paul, like there's no reason you shouldn't have this.
Okay.
There really isn't. The other project that you mentioned, and I think that this is the project that probably most people pick up a Raspberry Pi for, is emulation.
Right.
There are a few different emulation packages out there where, if you're not familiar with this concept, let's say you wanted to play Mario Brothers, right? If you had access to a Mario Brothers ROM, which is a pretty gray area. I'm not going to get too deep into that. I'll let you Google that on your own.
You can find one falling off the back of the truck if you look hard enough. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But the idea is that these ROMs are basically software code rips of the original like chips that drove these Nintendo cartridges, right?
Yep.
You can get emulators that play these old Nintendo games or old Super Nintendo games or Genesis or arcade games like Neo Geo, things like that. There are software images for your Raspberry Pi that can handle that, and because the Raspberry Pi has USB ports and Bluetooth, like you can get controllers and you can basically set up a little home console for, again, less than $100 that you can then use to play all your games. Now, the reason that I think this is a little trickier than doing the Pi-hole setup is if you start to get into this hobby, not that I would know anything about this, but if you start to get into this hobby, you will start to amass a pretty decent collection of ROMs over your lifetime.
Yep.
And you will probably want to store those externally. So you either have to have some kind of USB connected device that this can then read from, right? Which that requires a little bit of messing around, and there's plenty of tutorials on the internet that tells you how to do this. But again, if you're not familiar with mounting storage in Linux, guess what? You're going to have to figure that out, right?
Right.
And the software that drives these emulation stations actually has some built-in support for kind of handling all the scripting that's required for you automatically. But still, if you've not done it before, it's something you're going to have to figure out. So if you're going to go down that path, you're going to have to figure out, like, how do I get that software? How do I set it up my Raspberry Pi? Like, you're going to have to read a little bit, but it's not impossible, and you could get it going pretty easily, I think. The other project that I would say is probably the hardest one to accomplish here, just because it requires a couple different steps, is at my house, I have a Raspberry Pi that tracks flights around my house.
Interesting.
So radio is a hell of a thing, right? So you can go on Amazon, and for $30 or $40, you can get an antenna, and you can get what is called an ADS-B receiver that plugs into the antenna and also has a filter to improve the reception quality of your antenna that then plugs into the USB port on your Raspberry Pi. And all this does is aircraft are required to have ADS-B transmitters that report things like speed and position and direction and altitude. And all this does is it listens for things that, for airplanes or helicopters or, commercial planes or small civilian planes or even military planes that are flying around that your antenna can hear. And it does two things. The first thing it does is it can forward that information on to like a flight gateway like FlightAware.com. And you become a receiver for FlightAware. So FlightAware, if you've never been to that website, is really cool because it lets you track pretty much any airplane in flight. And then you can use it to figure out, is it on time? Is it delayed? Where is it coming from? Where is it going? Private planes can request a little bit of anonymous access there to make sure that people aren't necessarily snooping on private airplanes. But you can use that to track airplanes and look at tail numbers and see stuff. And it's kind of cool because the other thing it does is that in addition to forwarding all that information, and you get a free membership to FlightAware.com if you set up your own base station, the other thing it does is on your local network, it also gives you a web gateway that you can hit that basically will overlay a map with the airplanes, like in real time. So like if I hear a plane over my house, I can pull up the website and see who it is.
That's cool.
So if it's the government, I know.
They're watching you.
But yeah, they are. But it's kind of cool to track. And then the other nice thing it does is it overlays weather as well. So it has some external data feeds where it pulls down weather. So I can like basically pull up a radar around my house in that same kind of window. The reason this is a little bit harder is it obviously requires some external hardware, and it requires the installation of multiple pieces of software that is open source, right? So you have to I don't think that any of this software are in package managers, so you have to understand how to use things like Git to pull down the software to get it to work. But if you put your antenna in a relatively decent part in your house, you get pretty good reception. Like mine's in my basement because I have a ranch-style house. So I only really get to see planes that are relatively directly overhead of me, but that's okay. I can get, because I live relatively close to OSU Airport, I can see things coming out of there pretty easily. Commercial aircraft typically fly over my house on takeoff or landing. I mean, not so much that you hear it, but I am kind of in the flight path. So I can spy on planes all day. It's a fun little project to do. I had an extra degree of difficulty in mind because I have that software running in my Raspberry Pi Kubernetes cluster, which if you really want to go to the extreme, you can do something like that. So I have to pass physical hardware into the cluster to get it to work and run in a container, and that was way more messing around than you need. But if you want a fun project that incorporates things like radio and hardware and is actually kind of semi-useful, I would check it out. Like that, those are the three things I would say. But if you're going to start somewhere, Paul, I think you should absolutely get a Pi-hole running.
Now, speaking of your cluster, did you see the article that the Raspberry Pi 4 launch site was actually running on a cluster of Raspberry Pi 4s?
Yeah, so I'm tempted to pick up, 6 more Raspberry Pis
right.
and replace my cluster or augment it. But what I have is working fine. It's actually, I would say it's underused. I think I have like 4 deployments running on it right now. And one of the deployments, which is this FlightAware software, is actually hard-coded to one node because that's the node that has my USB stuff on.
Right,
so I have
right.
in my deployment, I actually say only deploy to nodes that have a certain tag, right? So it only, when I do an upgrade of the software, it only deploys to that node. So, yeah, so it's running that. It will eventually be running my BBS software when I get that up and running. It's running a VPN server. It's running a few little things that I mess with. So it's a good learning platform for Kubernetes. It was a little harder to set up than a normal Kubernetes server because setting up Kubernetes on bare metal or even in VMs is tricky. Like I think it lives in the cloud for a reason because there's a crap ton of configuration there. And setting it up on a Raspberry Pi running ARM is a little bit trickier, but that was a fun project. I need to blog more about that.
You should.
Yeah.
Well, I will take a look at Pi-hole and see what I can get running.
Yeah. So I would definitely check that stuff out. I think that everybody should own at least one and play with it. I think once you kind of go down that rabbit hole, right, of, hey, I got a little tiny computer on my desk that's as big as a deck of cards. I think it's a really cool thing. And then, you could start messing with GPIO pretty quickly, and you start turning LEDs on and off or wiring up displays or sensors. And it's fun. I will say that if you're going to pick up a Raspberry Pi at a store that sells Raspberry Pis, I would at least get a heatsink or 2 for it. I have noticed that it is running a little warmer than the 3s. I mean, under load they get warm, right?
Right.
My cluster, for example, which runs 24/7, doesn't necessarily use a ton of compute, but I can put my hand over it and feel a little warm. These things run a tad bit hotter. And you can overclock these things, right? Like you could probably push it to almost 2 gigahertz if you really tried. But, I would definitely make sure you got some active cooling, right? Like you could get a little tiny aluminum heatsink that goes on the Cortex chips. You can also get a little fan to mount on there. You may want to look into that too. So,
okay.
Yeah, Paul, where can people find you on the internet?
I am on Twitter at Paul Baylor. That is BAHLER. And where can people find you, Drew?
People can find me on Twitter at Pittsburgh, PITTFURG. So this has been another great episode of Doing Their Best, and as always, we thank you for listening. We would love to get your email.
Yep.
We did, according to you, we got one spam email.
Yes,
right?
We got one spam email. So yeah, send us your comments. You can reach us on Twitter at Doing Best Pod. You can send us an email at contact@doingtheirbest.com. You can leave us a review on iTunes or Apple Podcast now, Google Podcast, wherever you leave podcasts. Hit the star, whatever. Do all that stuff. We really appreciate it.
Yeah.
And thank you so much to everybody who's gone out of their way to say, hey, I listened to the podcast and I really enjoy it. That really makes my day. Yep. So thank you all.
It is pretty cool to hear that stuff. Should we bribe people to email us?
Ooh.
The first person to email us with a topic they want us to talk about, we'll not only talk about that topic, you will become the inaugural member of Paul Nation, where you are part of Paul's private army, right? and you are loyal to Paul, right? You are part of this podcast for eternity, and you will be at the top of every mailing list. You will be at the top of every Twitter feed that we have. Like, you will be celebrated. We speak your name, right? We will definitely regard you in the highest esteem. So if you're listening to this and you email us,
it could be you.
It could be you. It could be you. I would say that this isn't open. This isn't open to family members, so don't do that. Yeah. But if you're listening, I would say contact us.
Send us some ideas. We love to talk about them.
Yeah, and mash your face on the like button on all the different podcast things.
All the stars.
So people like us. Yeah,
all the
stars. Yeah, we're desperate.
Yep.
All right. Well, Paul, it's been a good one, man.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Drew, and we'll talk to you next week. Thanks for listening.
Later.